So sports betting and online gambling are on the rise in the country and on the continent. Many factors, including rising unemployment due to the coronavirus pandemic, are forcing or rather enticing people to turn to gambling. And online gambling has become an even more attractive option where people can gamble using their smartphones. We look at the impact of gambling and betting with Dr. Keitumetse Disemelo, a clinical psychologist. Doc, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. So gone are the days of sitting at a casino for hours on end and hoping to, make some return on your investment. Now people can just use their phones. Does that count as gambling?
Oh, yes, definitely. Thank you for very much for having me, and good afternoon to everyone listening. Yes, definitely this counts as gambling, because what happens is, the historical way of gambling, online gambling can also stimulate the brain's reward system, just like drugs, alcohol, or any substance or activity can, leading to an addiction. So people with, online gambling tendencies can also develop what they call compulsive gambling or pathological gambling, as it's sometimes referred to.
What is addiction? How do you know you are addicted?
So people with addiction tend to have, the typical signs and symptoms include being preoccupied with gambling, such as constantly, planning to get more gambling money. There's a lot of denial, unfortunately, and rationalization for behavior. There's a lot of blaming of others, avoiding to take responsibility. There's a need to gamble with increasing amounts of money to get the same thrill. There's when someone tries to cut back or control their gambling habits, this causes a lot of anxiety or restlessness, so they cannot stop, without formal assistance or professional assistance. And it can also lead, sadly, to theft, fraud, or jeopardizing relationships, work, dropping out of school, and asking others to bail you out for financial trouble because you gambled the money away. And unlike most casual gamblers who stop when they're losing or set a loss limit, people with a compulsive gambling problem are compelled to keep playing to recover their money, a pattern that obviously then over time becomes quite destructive.
Is it just about the thrill, though, Doc? And I ask you in a sense that somebody mentioned the other day as we were talking about sports betting that, well, for me, this is a form of employment. I get to feed my family. Unlike going to a casino where you have a car outside and there are people that you can, give your car to, they'll hold your car, they'll give you 50,000 Rand cash, and if you can't make that repayment, that's it, your car is gone. But with this, if I don't have money, I don't have money.
And yes, for some people, it's actually now become a form of employment. But for some people, it is obviously destructive in that they are unable to stop when it gets into a state where they are becoming, obviously, suffering with certain things because of it. Some people also use it for an escape, for their own depression, anxiety, or whatever mental health condition they might be struggling with. So, of course, there are those people who are under pressure financially who see this as a solution. The problem comes where it becomes, compulsive behavior that one does even when they are losing and putting their life or their livelihood or their, school career or their family relationships at risk. That is where it becomes a problem. And with gambling, if it becomes an addiction, then what happens is prevention, then or rather treatment for it becomes also challenging. And that's why it's very important that people who are prone or at high risk to develop addiction because of this online betting, that they also, become aware of the dangers they can put themselves in for various reasons. There are people who are at risk more than others, just like people who have certain personality traits would be at risk more than others. There are those who can be, able to stop, but there are those who literally struggle to stop.
And that's just it, right? So let's say you are watching somebody go through that. They nick a kettle here, they nick a cell phone there. What do you do? Also, how do you help somebody that does not think that they have a problem?
it is very difficult with any addiction that when someone is in denial or rationalizing their behavior, especially with online addiction, there are certain instances where it's actually illegal. It's okay to gamble where you have the control, but there are instances where, it is a problem. And there are certain stages that usually happen. And if I may, the first one is usually the experimentation part, or then followed by regular use, and then people who then, the third phase is high-risk use, and then the fourth phase being addiction or dependency. So the people who are in the experimentation phase and regular use are not usually, likely to develop an addiction. But those who move on to the third phase, which is the high-risk use phase, usually they develop addiction or, dependency on this, in spite of the losses. So those are the people that we are, querying, or rather questioning people about, to say, watch out that you're not in this high-risk stage to develop an addiction. And if you are, then obviously then it will not be advisable for you to actually, take on online gambling as a form of financial relief for your situation, because it will likely end in some sort of addiction or dependency.
Are people being taken advantage of, especially on the continent, or are we not an exception to the rule? Perhaps I ask you in relation to, in the introduction, we're talking about some of the underlying factors why people would gamble. It's been a tough 2 years. Some people, for them it's a form of employment. Has work been done to take a look at this, or really we're not the exception to the rule?
I think when it comes to online addiction specifically, there hasn't been enough work done to actually make people aware of the impact it might have. And it's also moving into, the youth, the younger, even below the legal age. So we need to be aware that with online platforms, it's so easy for even the young children to become addicted to this. And it's usually shame. It's sad, because the financial situation of our country, and also, people struggling with unemployment, is a reality. But we also need to promote these programs that offer the reduction of stigma around addiction, especially online betting, and also to make people aware that this thing actually exists, but also that there is help that's available. It will come in different multidisciplinary interventions, such as, therapy. There's also a need to look at the medical information of the person, and also a psychiatric assessment, because some people, they have anxiety, they have depression, they have ADHD. There's underlying things that could be putting them at risk. There's also certain medication that might be causing, the addictive behavior. So to promote what is available out there, self-help groups, and the important part is the relapse prevention. So with any addiction, there is always a likelihood that there might be relapse. The person might go back to it, even though it's non-functional for them. So there's a need to promote the help that's out there, because there is help out there. And also family support. The relationship usually gets so strained. So the education around that, the impact it can have on the family, is also very important.
Dr. Keitumetse Disemelo is a clinical psychologist. Thank you, Doc, for your time this afternoon.